Today?
Good evening, this is the September 13th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. First up, we have a couple of reserved decisions to read. Are you ready, or should we do Okay. First up, you wanna read appeal number 32, then, young lady?
Appeal number 2018-032, Karen Michonne, 918 Main Road, Aquabog, Suffolk County Tax Map number 667-315, APZ zoning for variances and or relief from Chapter 301, Section 39, where the proposed impervious surface is 50.3% of the total lot area and maximum permitted is 15%.
We have the applicant in front of us. Please step up to the microphone, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Kindly state your name and your address.
Sure. My name is Anthony Portillo from A&P Architecture, 15400 Main Road, Mattatuck, New York, 11952. The architect for Kareem Masson.
We got you.
Okay, and I just to kind of go over what we're doing, we are requesting relief on lot coverage for basically a parking lot that we're trying to create a professional establishment there, or professional office. I wanted to, we were asked the last hearing to come back or to present possibly a different parking scheme, which we did go back and forth with the planning board, and they actually said that we should keep the parking scheme that we presented the first time. We did present one that reduced it to 5 spots instead of the 6 that we're asking for, or that really they would like us to have. Due to the side yards at the on the lot, you know, we have to do this, you know, one way in and then one way out. So it's kind of a loop around to get the proper clearance for the driveway.
So can I ask a question
Sure.
before you go further?
Sure.
The planning staff recommended that?
It was Brian
Increase
from,
as opposed to decrease.
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
Did the planning staff request that the parking be increased or decreased?
They asked for the 6 spots that we're presenting on the
Okay.
plan.
And how many spots were they gonna reduce it by?
We were gonna reduce it by 1,
Just one?
Right.
Okay.
which would be one of the parallel parking
And
spots.
was that based on what the use was going to be or is going to be?
Right, well, I
Was
think what,
presented, or were there some change in thinking there?
I think their thought is that the professional building should be available to be used for medical one day, if ever needed, for future use, which would be the 6
Okay,
spaces.
well, that makes sense then.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I did wanna say to the board, you know, I looked around the area.
You did very well.
And there was two establishments that had, I couldn't find if they actually were presented to the zoning board and had any relief, but just two establishments that were in the residential, same, zoning area. And one is the Hampton Coffee Company, which is not far from this property. They're under half an acre, they're 0.49 of an acre, and their lot coverage is 51% with the parking lot. Also the Gardenia Restaurant, which is about the same amount in lot size, and they're approximately about 49% lot coverage. So we're really in line with them. The lot's a bit smaller, but we're asking for a professional office here, so like traffic-wise, you know, a lot less traffic coming in compared to these two establishments. I mean, they have a lot of traffic flow. I go to Hampton's Coffee. I
Get
mean,
the coffee.
yeah, and you know, in the morning, it's somewhat of a nightmare. This isn't like that, and this is
Okay.
gonna be used for therapist office, and rarely people will be coming in and out of that driveway. And also, the owners are here of the property, if you guys have any questions for them, or,
Anybody have any other questions?
I don't know.
We want anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments about this application? Please step up. Just kindly raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your
Angela
name and
DeVito,
address.
South Jamesport. I guess my question has to deal with the increase, and there's many applications you have here this evening that deal with impervious surface, which creates more runoff. We are in an area where everything runs off down into the bay, even though it is on the main road. Eventually, it does wind up in the bay. And I was thinking that both examples that were given of similar lot coverage, or a little bit more actually lot coverage, are places where they have a combination of pervious and impervious materials used for parking, like the Hampton Coffee place in the back there is mostly just gravel, pervious surfaces. At the other establishments mentioned, it's not paved. So I would ask that in consideration for the town's policy and commitment to improved water quality in both our bay and in the sound when we deal with issues of increasing the total impervious surface load, that where we can, we have them deal with pervious surfaces, if that's possible. And I don't know if with this particular establishment, I'm sorry I'm late to the application on this, if that's a possibility, but I think anywhere where you're granting relief for the percentage of what can be there, that it basically be environmentally friendly and not increase the load for runoff. Thank you.
Well, I certainly agree with you, but I think there are many more steps needed to be taken by Suffolk County as far as, I think this is a minor little, I mean, let's change what we put on our lawns.
Yes, Chairman McLaughlin, I have no argument with what you are saying there, nothing to respond to, but this is incrementally we keep adding. I mean, if we keep adding up the total impervious surface that every year in this town we increase by in terms of the runoff, it increases the loads for that. At the same time, we do need, and there was started under the Walter administration, an effort to have residents of the town, residential people, understand to pull back on their use of fertilizers and such. And we do understand that the greatest pollutant cause into both the bay and the sound is residential waste, personal waste materials. It is urine that adds the biggest load to it. But everything that we can do, we can't wait for Suffolk County to get their stuff together as a town, but everything that we can do step by step, incrementally to do this, I believe that we should do. And where it's possible, it should be explored. That's
Well,
all I'm asking for.
I can tell you on this particular case, we suggested to the applicant to reduce the amount of parking
I heard that.
to lower the pervious surface, and planning staff and other members of the town decided it would be more prudent to add another spot, trying to comply with the ordinance requirement,
For
but for
number of
future
spaces.
use as well.
but there's no, in
Planning staff probably could have done something.
planning staff in looking at, I think that if we have planning staff is short-sighted, or perhaps did not consider the entire picture, I don't think that for you, as the zoning board of appeals, you can dismiss it. I'm just asking, you know, I don't know if, and having not seen the paperwork from the planning department, did they just say in order to meet the number of parking spaces for future use that would be required by code, or did they say by impervious surface?
I believe it was designed based on what the ordinance had written, was written in the ordinance.
So it's just
We
by,
had suggested, gee, for such a small use for that particular use, that a lower amount of parking would have made more sense. However, I can understand the applicant saying, well, maybe in the future, if I have to re-rent the building, I'll
well,
have
actually,
it.
you can't make a decision based on what you may think happened in the future. That
Well,
would be
that
like
was
saying
their
we're going to
decision,
vote on
not ours.
this. Yeah, I'm just saying that the,
Not ours.
even the planning department to suggest that is inappropriate, as you know.
Well,
As you
we'll
know,
have to talk to
Leroy,
them.
it is inappropriate, but it still doesn't address the issue of pervious versus impervious surfaces. What can
Those
be used
issues
there in
were brought up
combination.
in the master plan
Mm-hmm,
in the early
Yeah.
2004.
right.
Something that definitely needs to be maybe readdressed with the problems that are going on with our bay.
Well, we have had, for example, when the town and with the state of New York purchased, Iamog Point, they did put in, okay, pervious surfaces there as the parking lot there, in consideration for runoff, from parking in that area there. So it's just, we are working on it, but I don't believe the code says that you have to, it says 15% impervious surface. It doesn't say and to give, almost, what are we looking at here? Almost a 300% increase. You're going from
Well,
15 to over
When they
300%
designed the code,
increase.
They designed it for 2-acre parcels.
Yeah,
So
and this
that's
is not a
why
2-acre parcel.
It seems to be a more significant number of percentage on a small lot like this.
Well, it still amounts to
it
that
should be-
over that 300% increase, and I'm just suggesting to you that a little creative thinking that still allows them the parking that is requisite for them to run a business, but to consider where they can combine impervious and pervious surfaces to reduce that 50% to perhaps 30%, something that's more
That would
reasonable.
fall more on the planning director and the planning department.
Well, if you give them the variance for this, then they don't have to do that. See, if you allow the variance on it,
Back,
yes, you can do that.
because we wanted to reduce.
You want to reduce parking spaces.
Correct. So I think we did the right thing, but the planning staff may have a different idea as to how it should go. And there are other factors that have to be considered that we weren't there to hear. But based on what I saw on the site plan, I said, this could probably lose a spot or
Spot,
two.
yeah.
That's all.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, bottom line, I don't think this is, it's not even a drop in the bucket. I mean, its bottom line is, what we do with our lawns and our sewerage as far as the bay is concerned. This is not a concern. You have anything else to say?
Yeah, I do wanna state that we did have multiple plans that we submitted to the planning board, and they really feel strongly that this is the better plan. They want the parking behind the home, behind the business. They don't want parking in front. Not only do they not want parking in front, it just doesn't work because of the size of the yard in the front. We did try to reduce the impervious surfaces. We are willing to entertain gravel maybe in the driveway or in certain areas if that's something the board feels necessary. I do believe, since we're a smaller lot, if you look at the comparison of the lot coverage, it's not covering as much square footage as like a 2-acre lot or half-acre lot or acre lot, right? We're not, just because we're on a smaller lot, is that why the percentage is so much higher? Or that we're asking, the percentage is 50%, but if you take those other establishments I mentioned, or even a 2-acre lot, so anyway, I'm an environmentalist and I agree, but I don't think we're asking to do, is really adding any runoff in the bays or anything.
Where do you live?
I'm from Atatuck, so.
Oh, I agree.
We won't hold that against you.
But
It's only
I now live in
5%
Bating
per-
Hollow, so I do live in the town of Riverhead, but I'm originally from Atatuck High School. I went to school there.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Again, we won't hold that against you now that you're moving forward. But,
Thank you.
Anyway, anyone else have any comment about this? Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I moved that the appeal of Karen Mason of 918 Main Road, Aquabog, for variances and relief for chapter 301, section 39, where the proposed impervious surface is 50.3% of the total lot area and the maximum permitted is 15%. Be approved in accordance with the applications and sketches with amendments thereto, if any, as filed with the building inspector and planning department.
Second.
Mr. Whitmire?
Aye.
Mrs. Worthington?
Aye.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So your appeal has been granted. In about 2 weeks from now, go to the building department, continue on with the process. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. And all thoughts are gratefully appreciated, so don't think we don't hear about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's get back to 43.
You're very
No,
welcome.
I'm gonna leave this with.
Have a good night.
Okay, appeal number 2018-22, Overlook Drive, of Edward Hackle on behalf of the Overlook Drive LLC is granted in its entirety in accordance with the application and is subject to the receipt of any and all additional or other approvals required by any other municipal board having jurisdiction. A complete decision will be filed with the clerk within 14 days. Thank you, Mr. Hackle.
Good luck.
So move, we
You
gotta
have
vote.
another?
So
you have
moved,
another one, or
Mr.
just go
Chairman.
next?
We gotta vote. I said so
Oh,
moved.
oops.
Second.
So moved. Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Worthington?
Aye.
Mr. Whitmire?
And I vote aye.
And so do I. So again, your appeal has been granted, and I jumped the gun, but there you go. All right. You have anything else there?
Huh? Who? When?
Oh.
180 Creek is a reserve.
That's what.
Yeah.
I left it on that table for you, remember I told you?
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
That's it? That's not it?
There should have been 3 extra ones. Oh, they're right here.
Shred it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want Creek?
You want Creek, we'll give you Creek.
There you go. I don't want it. And then you want Breezy? Oh, it's good. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, now we have a reserved decision on appeal number 18-39. I move the appeal of 180 Creek Road, Wading River for variances or relief from chapter 101, section 219-14A, where a proposed addition represents a development in a restricted bluff area, and additional additions to the buildings within 50 feet of the top of the bluff are prohibited. Section 29A, 1-B, where proposed accessory deck addition is in the front yard and 3.77 feet from the property line, and accessory structures are not permitted in the front yard, and minimum setback to the property line is 20 feet. Section 29A, 1C, where a wood boardwalk constructed in the rear yard is 7.7 feet from the side property line, and the minimum required is 20 feet. Section 31, where proposed combined side yard is 17.6 feet, and the minimum required is 45 feet. And section 222E, where proposed first and second story additions increase the gross floor area within required front and side yards, representing an increase of conformity to a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling, which is not permitted, is granted in accordance with the application and section, sketches, and amendments hereto, if any is filed with the building inspector. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Mrs. Worthington?
Aye.
Mr. Whitmire?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. Okay. We got a last one?
there's no attorney representing them tonight to speak for
No.
clarification.
No, but their attorney wrote
I saw the letter.
us the letter.
So procedurally, we're
So,
going to amend their approval,
Right, to include a clarification.
and it will be recorded in the town clerk's office.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, yeah, that's good.
I mean, we can,
I
I
just
think
wanna-
we should specify
Huh?
clarification though.
Specify?
Yeah, specify it on the paper.
Alright, you're gonna specify.
Fred has it
I'm just gonna read it.
specifically, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, appeal number, this is for reserve decision, appeal number 18-38, Miriam. How do you say the last name?
Help him, Chris.
Villa Vicencio.
Thank you.
My own.
Okay, you wanna read that there, young lady?
Do I have that one?
I thought you did, that's why you were talking about it.
No, that was the number one.
I think that's 111 Sleaze.
Yeah.
Right.
Auto reflected through the.
Yeah, I think we have to pick that one. And that's com-
Hold off on
Yeah,
reserve
here's the
decision?
extra. I'm sorry about that, I was confused, I thought we were doing.
That's okay. Are those folks here tonight?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have to hold off, the, decision hasn't been written, so
Thank
we
you.
apologize, but it's been one of those crazy nights. Anyway. Carissa, next one. Yeah, let's do that, make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we take appeal 1838 for reserve decision to be put off until September 27th.
Second.
Mr. Whitmire.
Aye.
Mr. Barnes.
Aye.
Mrs. Worthington.
Aye.
And I vote aye. We apologize. Okay. Read the next one.
Appeal number 2018-043, Lisa Perino Miller, 16 Midland Street, Riverhead, tax map number 600-1349, RA 40 zoning, for variances and/or relief from chapter 301, section 11, where the proposed building area is 30.3% of the lot area, and maximum permitted is 30%, where proposed combined side yard is 22.7 feet, and minimum required is 25 feet, where proposed rear yard setback is 35 feet, and minimum required is 40 feet. And section 222E, where the proposed addition increases gross floor area within a required front yard, representing an increase in the degree of nonconformity which is not permitted.
And if you kindly raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
State your name and your address.
Anthony Portillo, AMP Architecture, 15400 Main Road, Matatuck, 11952.
And that's where you were born, Matatuck, right?
No.
Yeah, we got you down.
Grew up there, though. Mrs. Miller and her family currently reside at 16 Midland Street in Riverhead. The residence is fairly small, and she wants to increase the square footage to allow for proper bedrooms for her and her family. Currently, they don't have enough room.
So, these are pre-existing conditions, or they are to be proposed?
There are some pre-existing non-conforming conditions, and we are creating some new non-conformances. I did notice, and this is a little bit of an embarrassment, that we're 0.3% over what's permitted or allowed, and I'm sure we can get that to 30%. So we probably can,
So the lot coverage, if you don't have it correct, it has to be republished.
No, I'm sorry, it is correct on what the plans are that we're submitting. I'm just saying if the board, if the board thinks that, to get it to 30%. I'm asking for the 30.3 because we have the design that we do
I
think is
know you're
suitable.
asking for it, but how is it posted?
30.3%.
And you have 30.3% on the,
Yes, sir. It's posted that way, that is part of what we're asking for. On the left side yard, we are currently extending it so that it would be, 13 feet. The right side yard is not changing, it is existing non-conforming. So what that is creating basically a 22.7 total, which is, 25 is what's required. In the rear yard, we are requesting for the 5 feet. I think we're the plan is condensed. I don't think we're asking for much. Like I said, it's really to fit her family. There's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a kitchen. We felt, obviously, to go to the left side yard because we didn't want to increase on the non-conformity on the right side yard. We thought that was a good way to design without increasing too much on that, or encroaching too much on that side. So that's really what we're presenting. I do have some cases that you did provide relief for that are very similar, in my opinion. Appeal number 16-23, the board did give relief to a single-family residence that increased nonconformity of the existing dwelling, and encroached on the front yard. Appeal number 1338, that was another single-family residence with a front yard depth of 31.8, which is more than what was required, which is 50, and the impervious surfaces was increased, or past the 15% by 21.7. And then a larger one, which was 15.24. The side property lines were 4.9 from one side and 10 feet from the other. I'm sorry, 4.9 from one side and 6.6 from the other. And then the rear yard depth was 18.9, and impervious surface was 32% at where the required is 15%, and that was also granted. So we thought those were similar cases the past few years that were close to what we were requesting or asking for. The owner is here as well if you have any questions for her.
Some of the numbers you were using for side yard and stuff, it doesn't seem to match up on the site plan for some reason. Just, let's go over it real quick again.
Sure.
On the westerly side, lot, would you call the left side?
Yes, the west.
With the addition, you're 13 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the rear yard, with the addition, you're gonna have
30
35 feet?
35 feet, sir, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear in my head, because the numbers you were using did not match the plan, but since you're agreeing with me now, I'm fine.
Yes.
All right,
And it's designated on the site plan?
yeah, I see it.
Okay.
I thought maybe you were looking at the plans from the other place on Main Road.
Well, they're folded here.
Okay. I just wanna see if you're awake. No, you are.
Well, we
You're
happen
doing
to, just get lucky and have, two on the docket for today, for tonight.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Tom.
it. It's on. Okay, well,
Anybody else?
Anyone else be heard on this
So-
matter?
Swear me back in?
Swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do. Actually, I just have some questions. This
You
existing.
first have to state your name and your
Oh, I'm
address.
sorry.
young lady.
Angela DeVito, South Jamesport. The existing structure was erected prior to the adoption of any town zoning? That's why it's pre-existing non-conforming?
I would assume that.
Well, do we know
I have
that?
to look at Brad's letter, because they do have a certificate of occupancy attached. But that was for an alteration to the residence. Yeah, that was nothing big. Then there was one in 1978, there was a CO granted. And that was the addition to the residence. So if there was a CO issued to the addition, then that leads us to believe that there was a CO in 1989 for a single garage. So they do have a CO for 1989.
That is after after we've initiated town zoning.
When
So
we,
there
the
isn't
town
there-
zoning was in 65,
65.
the master plan update was done in 2004.
So this structure was built prior to
2000
1965.
No. It was built in 1989 according to the records attached to the file.
And we had zoning
Not
at that
based on my
time.
personal knowledge.
Yeah, we had zoning at that time.
Of course.
That would have, been applied to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so my thing is that you're asking for, an exemption from pre-existing non-conforming uses or applications, and I'm saying, does this parcel enjoy pre-existing non-conforming, or is there other zoning,
Well-
obligations that apply to it?
There's a difference in the zoning code where it says there's pre-existing structures
And structures and land.
and
yeah.
land.
Right.
So these are two different issues. So, are they vested in 1989 zoning when it was back then? No.
Mhm. And has this always been a residential use?
For what I know,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't,
Okay, cause
I
that
don't,
wasn't clear in the record, so it was just,
wasn't
and that-
clear in
that
the
would've-
record?
in if, what is available to look at publicly, whether it said that it was always a residence from the time of
mean,
its initial structure.
I mean,
Construction.
technically, we rely upon the building inspector to
Mhm.
review all the records, and then
Correct.
whatever needs a variance, that's what comes to us.
I'm not questioning what you rely upon.
Okay, I just wanna
but
make sure
I'm
that's
just asking
where we're
that, you
headed.
know, in order to enjoy the consideration for pre-existing non-conforming, expansion of use, and also, the degree of non-conformity it's going to be increased by is what? And are there any standards for that in which, or restrictions on the degree of non-conformity increase that you can do?
There's nothing that I see in this particular application, and I don't, we very rarely get these. We used to get them a lot, and
You
then
have
they
about
stopped.
6 of them on your docket.
No, I said we used to get a
Yeah, I
lot
know,
of them,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden they've been reappeared now. My thinking is that the building inspector may have changed his opinion or have sought legal advice, and maybe he's doing these expansion of non-conforming structures, again. And that's what he puts in his denial letter. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you, Angela.
Anyone else to be heard?
I do want to say, we were asked, also because it is an existing non-conforming lot, which is always a residence, so we
Yeah,
have.
it's zone residential.
Yeah, it's zone
Right.
residential, but it's just a non-conforming lot.
And they
The
all
whole neighborhood is, yeah, exactly.
And they should have really done a non-conforming sliding scale chart,
Sure.
so that people with undersized lots wouldn't have to meet these large variances or
Right.
seem to be largest.
Right, cause the
Cause the
setbacks
whole
don't
town
really
can't be
work.
zoned 2 acre and you got quarter acre lots.
Agreed, and I think
And
that's
that
why
was
we-
not adopted, and that still bothers me to this day. Cause I've warned the board about it many times, and you cause all this unhard douche to people that wanna put an addition on, they have to wind up coming in front of us all the time on undersized lots.
Right,
So, okay, thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, go get 'em.
I move that the appeal of Lisa Fredo Miller, 16 Midland Street, Riverhead, Suffolk County Tax Map number 613-4-9, RA 40 zoning, for variance and or relief from chapter 301, section 11, where the proposed building area is 30.3% of the lot area and maximum permitted is 30. Where proposed combined side yard is 22.7 feet and minimum required is 25 feet. Where proposed rear yard setback is 35 feet and minimum required is 40 feet. And section 22E, where the proposed addition increases gross floor area with a required front yard representing an increase in the degree of non-conformity which is not permitted, be granted in accordance with the application and sketches with amendments thereto, if any, as filed with the building inspector.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Worthington,
Aye.
Mr. Whitmire,
And I vote aye.
and I vote aye too, so your appeal's been granted. So 2 weeks from now, building department, yeah, you're welcome. And
It's
continue on
only
with
an
the process,
addition and a
best of
couple
luck.
decks. I know you can just shave that existing deck down a little to meet the 30%, right? And he's gonna do it for you. Have a good night. Thanks.
All right,
2018-044. Do you have affidavits? Hobson Drive?
Oh. For Francis.
You have some?
Appeal number 2018-044, Francine Scott, 41 Hobson Drive, Riverhead, tax map number 600-85-344, RA 40 zoning for variances and or relief from chapter 301, section 11, where the proposed rear yard setback is 22.55 feet and the minimum required is 60 feet, and section 222E, where the proposed addition increases the gross floor area within a required front and rear yard, which represents as an increase in the degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing nonconforming dwelling which is not permitted.
If you're representing yourself, step up to the microphone, get sworn in. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Kindly state your name and your address.
Francis Scott, 733 West Main Street, Riverhead.
Okay, what are you proposing here?
Relief, in order to get a building permit, for an addition.
So you put the second story on without a permit?
Well,
Or
it
somebody else
actually,
did?
yeah, it was before I actually purchased the house, it
Pull
was
that
actually
mic
there.
up a little bit, would you, Mr.
Pull the
Allen?
mic up.
Just, yeah, so, pull it, that's
Okay.
it.
It was actually there, when I purchased the house. I did put a 6x8, utility room on the side.
So, your lawyer who represented you, did he do background check on that, or, I mean, if this was already built when you purchased it, without,
He may have bad cash. Does that happen? You don't do title search.
was there a title search done on this?
Yes, I believe so.
And I guess that's when it came up that there was no permits. Is that kinda what happened?
Do you have the title search?
I guess I can look for it.
Yeah, we would need that, I think. I wanna see it.
Well, did you record a deed? Should show that, and probably that's why it's here. Do you think that?
Well, how long ago did you buy it?
How long have you had that, Mr. Scott?
I had the house for 6 years. It had like a loft up top. I did extend it like, I would say, 4 feet.
Is somebody living in the house now?
No.
It's kinda run down, I mean, everything's peeling on it and,
Yeah, the tie deck is hanging off.
so are you remodeling it? Is that what's happening?
Yes, that's what I would like to do.
So when the building inspector spoke with you, he said that you need a rear yard setback, and you were increasing the gross floor area, which represented an increase in degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing nonconforming dwelling. You understood that you need to get a building permit, but to get the building permit, you need to come for us for a variance.
Yes,
That's pretty much where we are,
yes.
right? So if you get a building permit, you're gonna put the siding back on, the
Yes,
tie
I like
deck,
it,
and you're
yes.
gonna re-side it, and then you're
Yes.
gonna get a CO, correct?
W-
Hopefully.
Yes.
All
Well, I should have a letter of pre-existing use since it was,
So you have a letter of pre-existing non-conforming use, but there were things added that required a building permit and a certificate of occupancy, so that's where we are.
yes,
Okay. So at the end of the day, you'll get a CO for the upstairs.
yes.
Okay. I just wanna make sure the record's clear, that's where you're going. So, and when you bought the lot, did you have a closing Was it informal? Did you do it with a friend, or is this a straight transfer?
It was, there was an attorney, I had an attorney,
Did you know the person that you bought it from?
no,
No, so you bought it, through real estate or whatever?
yes,
Okay. So I personally don't need to see a title search, but if the town attorney recommends it, that's whatever.
He's just legalizing what we.
He's legalizing a non-conforming
Illegally
structure
constructed, right.
that without, so he basically is trying to get a permit to finish it, side it, and then get a CO for the areas that he already would like to finish. Were you ever issued any summonses from the town?
yes, I had a violation, yes.
So, was it a summons, did you have to go to court, or you just
No,
got a
no,
letter?
just a violation, and
So you got a violation notice, and then you ran right to the building department, filled out a
They
permit
corrected,
application,
yes.
good. That's fine, good.
Okay.
You're on the right track, just wanna make sure you're on the right track. I don't think we need,
No.
we don't need that,
Okay.
thank you.
I think you're fine.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
think we should just, read the appeal and move on, unless someone else wants to.
Anyone in the, audience have anything to say about this matter? No one? Fine, let's have a reading.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I move that the appeal of Francis Scott, 41 Hobson Drive, for variances, for chapter 301, section 11, proposed rear yard setback is 22.55 feet and the minimum required is 60 feet. And section 222E, where the proposed addition increases the gross floor area within the required front and rear yard, which represents an increase in the degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing nonconforming dwelling which is not permitted. Be approved in accordance with the applications and sketches with amendments thereto, if any, filed with the building inspector. So, I should have said be approved, I think I did, right? Okay, good.
Second.
Do I have a second? Thank you.
Mr. Whitmire,
Aye.
Ms. Worthington,
Aye.
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So best of luck with your, process.
Good
You're on the
luck.
right track, good luck.
All right,
You're
thank you.
doing a good job. We're watching you. Okay.
Appeal number 2018-045, Christopher Burns, 34 Howard Street, Wading River, tax map number 633-130, RB 80 zoning, for variances and/or relief from chapter 301, section 31, where the proposed front yard setback is 42.2 feet, and the minimum required is 60 feet, where the proposed side yard setbacks are 10 and 24.3 feet, and the minimum required is 30 feet, where the proposed combined side yard is 34.3 feet, and the minimum required is 65 feet. And section 222E, where the proposed additions increase the gross floor area within required front and side yards, representing an increase in the degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing dwelling which is not permitted. I did receive the affidavits.
Okay. Step up to the microphone. And kindly raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Kindly state your name and your address.
Christopher Burns, 34 Howard Street, Wading River.
Let's see what you got.
All right, doing a proposed addition for the house. Wanted to add a front porch and expand my garage, keep up appearances of the neighborhood, and beautify.
Come on, you want the man cave.
Oh, well. That's pretty much it.
And I heard she already cut that out of the budget, right?
You know, unless you have the approval to this board from your wife, you don't get it.
Come on, babe, say yes.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything, young lady. We'll speak for
We're
you.
not
No,
gonna
be on the
grant
record,
you to cut his
please.
garage out, all right? So, very nice. We were up there looking at it. It's a very nice house. Beautiful. I wish you a lot of luck there.
Thank you.
Mr. Lane lived in that house, I don't know how many years.
He built the house. He lived in the
That's a
basement
long
and built the
time.
house above him. And started construction in '57.
Just so you know, Roy Lane and Wading River owned this house, and he died at 100 years old. Amazing man, he was the postmaster in Wading River.
May you
Actually
be
passed
so
away
lucky.
in the house.
In the house?
Anyone else to be heard on this matter?
We're selling.
Let's have a reading.
Okay, I move that the appeal of Christopher Burns at 34 Howard Street, Wading River, tax map number 633-130, RB 80 zoning for variances and relief from chapter 301, section 31, where the proposed front yard setback is 42.2 feet and the minimum required is 60 feet. Where the proposed side yard setbacks are 10 and 24.3 feet and the minimum required is 30 feet. Where the proposed combined side yard is 34.3 feet and the minimum required is 65 feet. And section 222E, where the proposed additions increase the gross floor plan within the required front and side yards, representing an increase in the degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing dwelling, which is not permitted. Be granted in accordance with the application and the sketches with the amendments thereto, if any, as filed with the building inspector.
Second.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
Ms. Worthington?
Aye.
Mr. Whitmire?
And I vote aye.
And so do I. So your appeal's been granted. Young lady, at any time you're able to appeal this, you feel it's getting out of control, you certainly may come back to this board and we'll do our best.
We're gonna measure that garage too, I know it's gonna be bigger.
All right, best of luck to you folks.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Have a
Good
good
luck.
night, enjoy, and good luck on your expectancy.
All right, let's have appeal number 2/18/08, Breezy Hill Group. I move that in reference to the Breezy Hill Group LLC, 1792 Middle Road, Calverton, be clarified in accordance with the request of the Riverhead Building Inspector, the zoning officer, to state that section 101-1114A6 of the town code does not prohibit concrete crushing as previously determined by this board in its April 12th, 2018 decision, and that the processing of concrete, asphalt, and earth would not be prohibited, but the processing and/or transfer of garbage, including wood, metals, plastics, or other recyclables, and household refuge is prohibited. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Whitmire?
Aye.
Ms. Worthington?
Aye.
Mr. Barnes?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay.
2018-046, Frank Galuzzo, 29 Front Street, South Jamesport. Tax map number 692-4.1, RB80 zoning for variances and/or relief from chapter 301, section 29A1C, where the proposed pool setback is 41.4 feet from the side street line and minimum required is 60 feet, where the proposed deck setback is 34.42 feet from the side street line and the minimum required is 60 feet. Section 30, where the proposed dwelling side yard setback is 21.67 feet and minimum required is 30 feet, where the proposed dwelling combined side yard is 46.67 feet and the minimum required is 65 feet, where the proposed dwelling side yard abutting the side street setback is 25 feet and minimum required is 60 feet, and I received the postings and everything.
Mr. Cuddy,
Good evening.
you have the floor.
Charles Cuddy, 445 Griffin Avenue, Riverhead, New York. For the applicant, Mr. Galuzzo is here with me tonight. The problem with this lot is that it is an acre and a half lot in the 2-acre zone, the RB80 zone. It's 110 feet in width, it's close to 600 feet in length. So in order to put a house on it, there essentially has to be variances, even if it was located in the R40 district. There would still be variances needed for this lot, because the width of it is small. It unfortunately also is on 2 streets. It's on South Jamesport Avenue, which extends to the bay, and it's on Front Street. The variances that we're asking for are based upon as much setback as we can get for this type of house. The setback for the pool, and I think you can see it if you have your site plan out, is as much as we can push the pool back. I would also point out to you that this lot has DEC approval for a house that's actually larger than the present house. And that the lot is the house proposed is 300 feet from the water, 90 feet from the street. So we've set it back in each case as far as we can. Each of the variances that we're talking about involves the side yards, and it's basically because we have a 110-foot lot. And so we need variances for the house, where it's set back. We're talking about a deck, which is part of the house. We're talking about the side yards. The neighbor to our left or to the west of us, Mr. Barra, is actually closer to the lines than we are. Most of the buildings in Jamesport, in this area in South Jamesport, are basically on the property line. I have a map that we've made up to show you some of the homes in this area that are essentially right on the property lines because they're small. Here, we have a large lot, but it's small in width. So we have the same problem as everybody else, and that is to try and fit something on a lot that's small. I think each of the requests that we're making are requests that are minimum requests. I think if you look as far as the standards go, we certainly aren't going to impact the neighborhood by building a single house. This neighborhood, by the way, has across from us a park, has to the northeast of us a Bayview restaurant, has relatively small lots and houses in the area. We're not, by building a house, which is certainly permitted, going to impact the area. We're not doing anything environmentally that's going to harm the site, impact the site. We think that there may be concern that it's substantial, but it's substantial only because the code has been changed. There's nothing else that we really can do. We don't have many alternatives. We want to build a house. Mr. Galuzzo would like to retire to this house. This is going to be for his family. It's going to be for nothing else. So I'd like to put in just this statement of the other houses.
Mr. Cuddy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I've heard some people complaining that somebody put fences along the property line down in that area, and people can't walk on the beach. Is your client put a fence up? Did he put a fence
No.
up to block off people?
No, because my client, by the way, is a contract vendee. He's in the process of buying this. No, he did not. To answer your question, he did not put a fence up.
Okay.
I've asked him that because I heard that this afternoon.
Yeah, I've been hearing about it, I wasn't sure, and I haven't verified it with anyone. So I don't know if it's that lot or the lot to the west, I'm not sure, but I know people are upset over it.
It's not our intention to cut people off from the high water line. It's not something that he provokes us to do. No, from the high water line on down.
No, people know that a house can be built there legally, and of course, they would love to have access to the beach, but as a homeowner, I can understand some people trying to block that off, because every time you go there, people leave their litter behind, and it's a constant problem then. And it's no different than Reeves Park or any other place that will beach that we have open to the general public. So, I was just curious more than anything else.
No, we
Thank
don't,
you for
we
your
don't know if
answer.
he put the fence in.
I could take a bet, or a guess. But anyway, okay. Thank you.
We're here to answer questions, if you have
Well,
questions.
let's hear what the neighbors have to say.
One other question.
Yeah.
The, front of this house that runs down to the bay, I think it's 60 feet. That's got a lot of, natural growth in it. None of that's gonna be cleaned away, is it?
I don't anticipate that it will not.
Cause I mean, it's natural growth to the.
There, no, it's a wooded lot. There's no question about it.
All right, let's hear from the neighbors and, who's up?
All the happiness. Oh, this is the house.
Kindly raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your name and your address.
Angela DeVito, South Jamesport. This application of 2018-46, I have several objections to it. The first is that the claim that it's a buildable lot, you need 2 acres. It's RB 80. There was no structure existing on this property prior to that. The rest of the community that surrounds it, that has been referred to by Mr. Cuddy, are homes that were built in the 1950s, late 1940s, early 1960s, at a time of different zoning in the town. Even if this was to be zoned an RB 40 or an RA 40, the amount of, according to the current tax rolls, is that it's 1.1 acres. It represents 55% of the acreage that's needed to construct on here. Given the fact that what has been purchased by this gentleman, and I'm sorry, I think he's been sold a bill of goods, is an undersized lot that he cannot really develop unless you grant him all of these variances. The second objection is that, again, the amount of setbacks significantly increase the potential for increased impervious surfaces, and this is a property that directly addresses itself to the bay. The pool setback is 70%, the deck setback is 57%, the side yard setback is 71%, the combined side yard setback is 70% of what is required by the codes. I had previously stated the concerns about the increase in runoff. It's also the fact that since the town of Riverhead opted out of the Suffolk County program for the alternate septic systems, you will get a traditional septic system put in here, which also increases the potential for pollution into the bay. My last objection is that, and I'm sure that you're aware of, is that this property is home to an endangered species, the piping plover, that nests in the southern portion of it every single year. And proposed construction, as well as taking up residence there, might disturb these protected nesting grounds. So I would ask, as you give your decision, that you also ask the petitioner to get permission from DEC to proceed with this in recognition of this protected area. DEC puts up protected area every single year for the piping plover in this area here. So I would suggest that that be part of any additional materials that you may require of them. But as I stated, the objection is that it simply is not a buildable lot. They don't have 2 acres. And I understand the argument that you can, when you purchase land, you have a right to develop it. They also have the right to, if you deny their application, to proceed with an Article 78. Thank you.
Even though, Angela, the lot is, in your eyes, undersized, it's always been in single and separate ownership. So, that gives him a right to build on it.
Correct.
Okay, so you're saying he doesn't have a right, that's what you
It's
said.
not, I don't believe that they're, with a single and separate ownership, that right is given there, but you can deny this and have them appeal it. Okay, it's 2 acres. I would have to ask you in general, in 2004 and
Appeal it to whom?
they can go to an Article
the Supreme
78.
Court?
Yeah, to the Supreme Court. That's
Why?
what, that's my relief is, if I don't like your decision. What's that not his?
That's
It's his
true.
relief. Okay, that's his,
That's
I mean, the
true.
thing is to balance, okay, we issue, from 2004 to 2006, this town spent a huge amount of time and effort, you were part of it, Leroy, to issue zone use districts, requirements. Okay, this is a lot that it doesn't have prior construction on it. If it did, I would see my objections don't
So
matter.
there was other
It's a vacant
undersized-
lot, and it's a lot that cannot be built on, actually,
I'm trying to understand, that's all,
Yeah.
Angela. There's a lot on Point Street that was just cleared.
correct. I would disagree with that also.
That's way undersized.
That's way undersized, the
According
one-
to this lot.
The one that
But-
you gave the house on Green Street to be built, okay, the house
one
is
I
higher
gave?
than any single house that exists on Green Street, it doesn't fit in at all.
Street, I don't
It
know.
was an undersized lot, it was 50% of what was needed. These
So
sorts
what-
of things,
So you think, in your opinion, you think we should deny them that?
I think you should deny
And take
him.
him to court, let him take us to court?
Yeah.
And then lose?
You won't lose,
Really?
you won't lose in court.
Oh, you
I
have
know.
he has a constitutional right to develop the property.
Let him establish that in court, let it be established by the
Why-
courts.
Why would we
Dawn,
wanna be
why should you give
obstructionists
this-
to
why
somebody
should
in
you
the
give-
Constitution of the United States? We're not gonna be obstructionists.
You're not obstructionists, you're
No,
making a
you
decision
are.
on So what do you do with your code use? Where's your land management plan for this town?
That's
Why
in
do
the
we
town
have
code.
those codes? Why do we have these codes? Why do we have zone use
Angela, you
districts?
should really talk to the town board about this.
I will,
It's
I
not- it's
intend
actually
to.
You need to do that.
I definitely,
comprehensive-
Leroy, don't be sarcastic,
the
Leroy.
comp-
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
just
plan.
saying, I can't believe what you're saying.
Excuse me.
The comprehensive
really,
plan
like,
is moving
disappointed in
into
you.
the future, so
Huh?
if in the event that the person doesn't have a constitutional right or the lots merge, if you had two parcels that were adjoining, owned by the same owner, those would be merged to upzone, to be
Dawn, I
conforming.
understand all of those
But
arguments.
Angela, the law requires that the constitutional
Well, then
right,
don't give him the degree of setbacks that they
well,
want.
that's a different,
That's all.
that's a completely
don't give him the
different
degree of
request.
setbacks that they want.
His plans to
I mean, it
satisfy
doesn't-
you?
Hmm?
I don't get it, Angela.
It's not to satisfy me, Leroy, it's to
where-
satisfy, you're supposed to balance with what is for the good and benefit of
This
the town
lot
of
is
Riverhead.
Almost 2 acres.
It's not almost, it's 1.1 acres. That's what's on the town tax rolls, that's what it is. It's only 55% of the required acreage. You had a question for me, Mr. Whitmire?
So,
I don't know if it's a question, I'm probably the oldest guy up here, but, you know,
You and me
my
both, yeah.
mind kinda rolls. But, you live there, so you're extremely familiar with that area, is that correct?
Correct.
If we didn't grant variances, there's so many undersized lots there, regardless of what the code says. If we didn't grant any variances, that, all that land would be vacant. Polish Town is another area. All these lots are undersized according to what the code is.
We'd
If
be
we,
in court.
if we weren't here, everything would be vacant. If
It's
you
a-
had an
it's a-
undersized lot, you couldn't get any relief anywhere.
It's basically what you're suggesting is that the board inversely condemn the property by making it undevelopable by application of the existing zoning. And the condemnation then would require the town to purchase the property for its full
Well, then
value.
then maybe the town should purchase the property as they had the opportunity to purchase it
Well,
from the
that's a-
Luces in
that's
the
a-
past.
that's a
And it was
decision for the
totally,
town
I
board.
mean, I think that, you know, the thing, I guess, actually what upsets me is that we have realtors in this town who walk in and say, here are undersized lots, don't worry about it, you could do whatever you want, okay? And they sell it to people who believe that they will be able to get all of this relief.
well, if it's
And
single and
it's not.
separate,
But
yes.
the town is loaded with undersized. Wading River in Holt's Landing.
Everybody needs a variance.
Everybody needs a
Well, then,
variance.
perhaps, Chairman McLaughlin, part of what the ZBA should be saying to the town board is that in 2004, 2006, when you passed all these zone use districts, guess what, bozos? You didn't figure out what to do with undersized lots, and you gotta address it today.
I did, and I told them what to do, and they didn't listen. I can't help that,
You
but I
had-
was a part of it.
You had a part of it, but the thing is
And
that
I
we
had a
also had from
solution.
2010
solution,
going forward,
Angela.
we had the ability to do it.
And the other thing, Angela, is it's 1.4793 acres, it's an acre and a half.
Not according to the tax rolls.
Well, according to the surveys.
According to the
stamped
survey,
by
but not the
Frank
tax
Pazul.
rolls, not,
All
I
right.
use
The
your tax rolls,
are
that's
less
it.
accurate.
Mrs. DeVito,
This
we
is
have all
more
your,
accurate.
we have all your
Concerns.
concerns, thank you.
All right.
Anyone else to be heard on this matter, please step up. Thank you, sir. If you kindly raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? State your name and your address.
James Farley, South Jamesport. I'm a neighbor, probably about 50 feet away. My house was built in 1830. Background, I think you probably got a note from the Landmarks Commission about concerns they have in terms of elevations and how they would like that property to fit into the neighborhood, if you will. Second observation is we bought our house in 1983, and that lot's been for sale. It was for sale then, and it's kind of, in some ways, I can understand Angela's comments. She's much more well-versed in all the rules and particulars. I not so. But my bigger question relates to the survey that you're looking to, and the definition of the high water mark and the boundaries that are being proposed in this case. A very simple observation at Miamog Point would suggest to you that the high water mark is just a bit below the existing fence that runs along South Jamesport Avenue. This survey here, I think, demonstrates a property line that is somewhat 20 to 30 feet beyond the last utility pole. Now, that last utility pole is already 20 to 30 feet below the high water mark, and the final definition of the boundary would be 20 feet below that. My measurements are probably off, and I'm not going to debate the measurements, but roughly speaking. So there seems to be, when we talk about the snow fences, there were 2 snow fences there, actually. There was one that was between this property that we're talking about and Mr. Barra's property. And there was also initially a snow fence that ran along, South Jamesport Avenue, right down to the water too. So there were 2 there when the topic.
Blocking people from walking on the.
Blocking people completely,
what I
yeah.
hear.
Yeah, that's going on. I'd have to say that I would disagree with you, Mr. Barnes, about trash and everything like that on
It's
Miamog Point. We walk it every day, it's clean, people take their mess when they go. It is a alternative public beach for Riverhead, citizens these days.
So what was the purpose of the fences, you think?
I have no idea, outside of perhaps,
Thought they were
well,
trespassing?
one could wax eloquent about all sorts of possible causes, prejudices, whatever you want, but I wouldn't be able to tell you. So our main concern really is simply to make sure that as we allow any development to go forward on this property, that we have the property boundaries properly defined. And in this instance,
By
we're
whom?
not quite sure who's supposed to define these property
Well, that's what we
boundaries.
have surveyors
There's a
for.
survey, yes, but the survey, it's a bit of a self-interested survey because he's also the applicant, also the future owner of the
But
property.
he has his professional stamp on it.
Well, he does,
Not that
I
I
agree,
wanna
and I take
argue
that
about
point, nor am I trying to cast aspersions on his, but it just seems to me that the extension of the property line to where it is in the survey seems rather dramatic change. And I guess my point
So-
simply is, I don't understand, very simple question, I don't understand what takes precedence here for the public. Is it the high water mark, or is it defined boundary? Because I don't wanna go down there on a Tuesday afternoon, or typically on a weekend, where all of a sudden people are building bulkheads and bulkheading out the whole property.
No, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, yeah, but I mean, once
Have
the
you read
lines
his
are drawn.
DEC permit? Have you read the permit that was approved
Yeah, well, I saw the permit
From
that's
the
approved,
DEC? from the DEC?
No, I've not seen the DEC permit,
We
no.
have the permit here if you'd like to read it.
I couldn't okay, I'm happy to read it,
But you have
but,
to remember that people, when they make an application, the DEC relies on those high marks on these surveys. And to be honest with you, there probably is another survey out there prior to him being the contract ND.
could be.
So, I would think it would behoove the building inspector or any concerned parties to take a look at both surveys and see how accurate they are.
Well, I think,
And then you could raise objections in that venue.
I would
We're here
agree, except,
strictly for setbacks.
except, I have one point of view there, and I'm privileged being in the neighborhood where, Angela is, because she's very knowledgeable and knows all these sorts of things that I'm not familiar with. But I sort of look at this a little bit differently. You guys are the zoning board of appeals, representing the citizens of Riverhead.
You're right,
I count on you guys knowing.
okay.
If I've gotta go out and hire a surveyor and a lawyer to figure it out for myself to come back and tell you what I disagree with, then I'm beginning to wonder why I've hired you, okay? So,
This
it
is one
seem-
of those cases where we have to listen to you
I got what
folks,
you're saying.
and then we
You know what I
have to go back and do our homework. So we appreciate
So,
what you're
yeah,
saying,
are you
and this will not just go, okay,
okay,
you know, we'll
so
go
I'm
by
just-
that survey.
Dawn?
We appreciate what you're saying, and we'll take it from there.
Alright, I'm just trying to think of who we just, but it doesn't matter.
anyway,
So you have to rely on the building inspector
I hope so.
who wrote the denial letter based on the survey that was submitted. Additionally, there was a permit issued by the DEC and it's actually expired, by the way.
Yes, but my
that
only
needs to be
concern here is that,
renewed.
well, I can follow the language of these permits and these resolutions, but what we've got here is a resolution that's talking about side yard dimensions and things like that. Nobody's talking about the definition of the size of the property and the appropriate high water mark and the appropriate,
Well,
what the title should say.
But that's not our purview. It's not under the zoning board, they're appealing what they've asked for, which was publicly noticed.
Right.
Not questioning a surveyor where the high water mark is. If you have a concern about that, then I would raise that with the building inspector and take it up with him.
Okay,
And that's it.
but it seems to me that we're beyond that point, aren't we?
Not that
No.
we won't,
He has no building permit yet. Yes.
Oh, yes, that's a fair point, I understand what you're
No
saying.
building permit has
Yes.
been issued.
Yeah.
There has been a titles wetland permit issued by the DEC, who they're the ones that are concerned about environmentally sensitive areas and piping plovers nesting.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens and there's dates where those birds are, they stop construction during
Well,
construction.
I'm sure they would, yeah.
And I've seen it many times. So I would think the DEC at least has something in hand how to deal with this issue. If you're disputing the survey, I would take it up with the building
No, I'm
inspector.
not disputing it, I'm kind of asking the board whether I'm supposed to rely on that. At the same time, what I'm more concerned
Well,
about
we
is, well, what I'm most concerned about is that as, you know, as people build on these remaining waterfront lots,
Right,
Neomog Point is a rather unique place.
it's a beautiful lot.
And my only concern is, based upon the snow fences and things like that, there's clearly, attitudinally speaking, a sense that, you know, they wanna leave us about 1.5 feet between the water
I agree.
and the bulkhead, that everybody says it's never gonna come, but the moment, you know, if the climate change stuff is true and the water levels are gonna come, we're gonna see the bulkheads.
If you don't think I don't hear it, cause I hear it, my sister lives there.
Yeah.
Right in South Jamesport, along with all the other knowledgeable people that live there, and she's very knowledgeable as well. And she's upset about it also. However,
Well, wait,
I'm
don't
relying on the
don't misunderstand me.
I'm not trying to
I am not
I'm
upset
okay.
about the idea that Mr. Galuzzo wants to purchase the property and put a home there. I kinda like that, okay?
That's good.
You know, I'm building in South Jamesport, I'm, you know, putting a big investment into South Jamesport, so that doesn't trouble me so.
Are you doing any work there now?
Yeah, you approved the building that I'm
I
just
thought I
finishing putting
did.
up, yeah.
Cause you transferred your two-family status to the other
Yeah.
building,
I'm next door to the Bayview, oh, excuse me,
You're
Bay
behind
Breeze, pardon me, yeah.
whatever way you're facing it.
They do
yeah, yeah.
chop house.
Hmm? Now the Chop House, yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised
Next
nobody
week it'll be
opposed that
pizza, huh?
project.
What's that?
I'm surprised nobody opposed your project.
Well, it's because I planned a good project.
You did, it was nice, I like the way it came out.
All right, again, we will do our homework, you do your homework, and
Okay,
we'll see you
so-
at the next meeting.
Okay.
Let's
but-
see who's up next.
All right.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand, pull the microphone down. That's about right. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Kindly state your name and your address.
Ethel Sussman, South Jamesport.
Go ahead, Ethel, you got the floor.
Well, I'm going to tell a very short story, that I used to work for the New York City Council, and as such, we were, the beneficiaries of many complaints about all kinds of things. And, one day a gentleman came and he complained about the noise on the Queensboro Bridge and wanted us to do something about it, like yesterday. He was very exercised. And then he said that he had bought a cooperative apartment 2 blocks from the bridge. And he realized that he was very bothered by this noise. And so we said to him, you know, didn't you realize that the bridge was there, when you bought this apartment? Well, yes, he did, but now he wanted some relief from all the noise. And this, request for variance kind of reminds me about that. And I've heard it a few other times, where somebody buys a piece of property knowing what the restrictions are, and then they sort of count on the town to grant them permission to ignore those restrictions. And I just don't get it. I don't get why the town needs to do that when it's detrimental to the neighborhood, and it doesn't make sense to me. Let me put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, if you kindly raise your right hand, you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I
State
do.
your name and your address.
Robert Walsh, South Jamesport. I'd just like to bring up a couple of points, the discussion on the survey. We are taking into consideration when the town sued the homeowners previously in the community down there, when they were trying to close off beach access, that the town won the lawsuit, that it's not just straight lines down from the curbs, okay? Myamog Point has now become a town beach, okay? The town treats it as a town beach. There's parking on the west-hand side adjacent to this property. We have not been able to pave that since Superstorm Sandy, because ENCON will not allow him to pave down there. Okay, the streets are collapsing down there, and the town paved South Jamesport Avenue from Front Street to 25 and could not go to the bay.
That was 'cause it was in their jurisdiction.
Excuse me?
It was in the jurisdiction of the DEC.
Is it DEC? Yeah, but we
Yeah.
have a DEC sign off for a building lot on the other side. Do you have the perk test as well?
On this?
Yeah.
I didn't look.
Okay,
I'm not
because
reviewing.
Patchell tried for perk tests, the old motel on the bay, for 10 years and never succeeded.
Well, we don't really review perk tests because we're only reviewing the area variance.
Okay,
The building inspector is the one that's supposed to do that job.
okay.
If you wanna ask him, you're welcome to.
Oh, that I will do. I will
Okay.
follow up with the building department on some of this also.
Absolutely.
Because we are dealing with the fences down there now.
Yes.
Okay, the homeowners are now running the fences down below high tide. And Jamesport Civic Association is gonna take this up with the town now and the supervisor.
Tell-
Because it's out of control what's going on
Tell
down
me,
there.
what is leading you to believe that they're putting the fences up for what reason?
They're stopping access. They've actually called the police department, the homeowners to the adjacent to this property being proposed right now, called the police department on the 4th of July weekend to kick young families off that beach, below the high tide.
So you're saying the owner of the house or
The owner of the house
vacant lot?
adjacent to this lot.
So that's,
How are those people
the
getting on
guy-
the
I
beach?
know
I'm
who he
trying to
is.
understand this. How those people that are being kicked off the beach, how are they getting there?
They walk on the beach and then the police department comes down and escorts them off because the people are claiming it's private property and it's not below the high tide mark,
Gotcha.
okay?
so we have a dispute going on
There's
as
a
to
major
where the-
dispute brewing
Yeah,
down there.
I understand. No, I wonder why he's blocking it off. Is it because he doesn't want?
There's two homeowners blocking it off, and nobody can answer that question.
So
And
has
you know
anybody
what?
talked-
And the tide came in this week and washed part of the fence down again.
Oh, that's what happened, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's what happened,
I've been
okay?
trying to get bits and pieces.
Yeah, no, they put in snow fence, they put in regular posts, the tide comes in. A big portion of that point, right up to South Jamesport Avenue, was underwater Monday and Tuesday this week.
So,
So,
has the Civic
Superstorm
Associ-
Sandy, the whole thing was underwater.
I know. Has the Civic tried to contact Mr. Barron and have a conversation with him?
We're
while
gonna
he's
have a
putting the fence-
conversation with the supervisor, okay? Because we're not really getting anywhere right now, we
So
decided
you
we're gonna go to
haven't had a
supervisor.
conversation with him?
With Mr. Barrett, no.
Okay, so you're gonna go to the supervisor?
We're gonna meet on Saturday and it will be
Okay.
discussed,
That's fair.
okay? Because you can only, you can't block progress, but some of these variances, how are you gonna have parking on the west side of that street with how crowded that is, with the house right next door and you're granting a variance to that?
Well, we're doing it based on an area variance because he has a right to construct on that lot. He has that constitutional right to build.
There's no argument
And we're
about
not
that.
taking that away
There's
from
no
him.
Now,
So
we
I
also
don't
have
know
the-
what professional,
The town
is
of
telling
Riverhead
you
residents
that
also
they
have the
shouldn't be
right to
doing this.
park on the right-hand side of
but
that
that's a
street. and
separate
park.
issue. We're only
Okay.
here to deal with what's in the zoning code. That's it, as to what lot coverage should be, what size the lot should be, blah, 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 I can go all day.
Okay,
That's what they're here for, that one issue. We're not the town, the whole town of Riverhead, that's a planning, or I should say it's the town board's issue.
I would go to every town board meeting until this is resolved.
I mean, I get the objections, again, my sister lives there, I hear it all the time. And I said, gee, I'll look into it and see what's going on, but I haven't got to the bottom yet. 'Cause
the fences have been getting washed out by the tide,
Okay,
okay?
we will definitely look into it, that's all I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
we're gonna ask,
Thank you for your
we're gonna
time.
definitely ask some questions, that's for sure.
Just state your name and your address and pull the microphone down.
Down here.
Yeah, Ethel Sussman, South James.
Okay, Ethel.
I'm hoping you can clarify something for me. I hear you talking about his constitutional right to build.
Correct.
Why is it his constitutional right to build whatever he wants? I mean, isn't it his
Well-
constitutional right to build within the limits that the town has established? Isn't
The
that,
town, when
isn't
they
that his
I'll answer your question, when
Yes,
the town
please.
does zoning,
right?
it ideally puts out what a lot size should be in our community when subdividing. So, right now in that area, it's 2-acre zoning.
Right.
There are no 2-acre lots in that area, anywhere, right? So they wrote the zoning code that way, and what they should have done was a sliding scale, pre-existing lot zoning, setbacks and requirements, and shorten them so the degree of nonconformity doesn't look that great. but that's zoning, and, you know, there's 242 towns or counties in the state of New York. Every single town in this state has a zoning board of appeals, and every town has a town board that can write local laws to regulate zoning. And it's all based on the Constitution of the United States. And to ask us to sue, to take away their property rights and let the town be sued, that's just ludicrous, cause then you're using my taxpayer money to pay for a lawsuit that I shouldn't have to pay for.
With respect, I'm not asking anybody to sue anybody.
Well,
thank
someone
you,
else
thank you.
suggested it. I can't believe you did that.
The-
I know you do, I'm paying $12,000 now, Angela.
All right, I have the floor.
Oh, come on.
Let this lady speak.
Yes, so,
Thank you, Otto.
so the purchaser of the property, whoever it may be, has the right, as I understand it, has the right, the constitutional right to build according to the regulations that the town has
No,
established.
it's to a degree, yes, but that's why they're in front of our board, because certain things have to be taken into consideration as far as what you can build and when you can.
But that's
Life's not
not his
perfect.
constitutional
Yeah,
right.
no, you're,
You keep talking about,
go ahead.
I'm gonna give you
Hold on.
a quick primer, right? So, in the United States, if you own property, the government cannot take your property without just compensation, correct? That's the constitutional requirement. That's a very broad requirement, and if you own property, if you own a blank slate, you can do whatever you want with it, and no one can take it away from you unless they pay you the value of it. The law also gives the town the ability to zone the property and to circumscribe those rights to a certain degree.
okay,
But it cannot eradicate those rights or take the property, the value of the property without compensating the owner. That's the law. So the whole reason that this zoning board exists by virtue of state law is to ensure that there's a relief valve for zoning that doesn't work on a particular parcel, as in this particular case. So the parcel was created many years ago. The town, within its rights, upzoned the area. Most of those parcels are undersized, but if the town didn't give relief, it would have to compensate those owners for the value of those parcels. So that's why this board is able to give variance relief. They're allowed to give certain types of relief. That's the whole purpose of this board, is to make sure that the constitutional rights of the property owners are protected.
well,
And
if you,
so, this board has 5 criteria that it uses to make a determination as to whether a variance should be granted or not, and I'll read them to you quickly. I just went through them. I gave it to you. The one scribbly thing by the end.
Oh, right here.
Hold on one second. Yeah. Oh, wait, I have it right here, hang on. Okay, so those criteria that this board uses, let me get to page 12.
who sets the criteria?
The state of New York, and the criteria, there's 5 criteria, it's in New York State Town Law, section 267B. And the first criteria is whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties would be created by granting the variance. 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method feasible to the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. 3, whether the requested variance is substantial, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect on the impact or the physical environment, on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood, and whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant, but not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. So those are the criteria, and most of the time, it's based upon what does the neighborhood look like? So if everyone in the neighborhood has a 10-foot side yard setback, and the applicant's side yard setbacks are required to be 25 because the new law was applied, but everybody's is 10, the granting of a variance to allow that property to have a 10 rather than a 25 wouldn't be a change to the character of the neighborhood, it would be the same. So those are the kinds of things that this board evaluates, but they can't, without requiring the town to compensate the owner, declare the property undevelopable. The comprehensive plan is adopted by the town board, and that lets them implement zoning, which they're allowed to do to circumscribe the constitutional rights of the property owner, but the comprehensive plan doesn't take away the property owner's rights. It only helps the town moving forward with parcels that haven't been developed and are.
Which is the case here.
Right, but again, this property was created in the size that it is prior to the change in zone. So for instance, the town couldn't take your property and say, well, now you have 2 acre zoning, right, and your property's probably 100 by 100, and you wanna put a pool in, or you wanna use that property in the way that you want, the town can't say, well, no, the zoning doesn't allow you to build a house, or the zoning doesn't allow you to, you're allowed to ask this board for relief that's consistent with the character of the existing neighborhood. And hopefully that helps, but
It does, but I have to say, if those criteria were scrupulously applied, the gross anomalies of certain houses in South Jamesport wouldn't exist.
Well, those are the criteria that anybody who's considering, or opposing those applications have to address to this board, and those are the criteria they have to consider. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do pursuant to the law, then you can file an Article 78, but they can't just, they could just deny it, but it would be an incredible waste of taxpayer money, because they would be sued, and then they would either have to grant variances or buy the property for the value that it is.
So are you in essence saying that
I'm not saying anything, I'm just stating law. It's not my opinion, it's the law.
So Esther,
is anyone, Ethel,
Ethel,
is
sorry.
are you saying that,
We're not saying anything, we're just going by what the law is.
well, I'm hearing things being said, so somebody is saying them, okay? And is whoever is saying them, saying in essence that in order to avoid lawsuits, in order to obey the Constitution, et cetera, this board is in essence obligated to give 100%.
No,
They're required to apply the criteria set forth in Town Law 267B to the petition of the applicant for a variance. And then they get to decide whether they think that an application meets the criteria. They can approve it or they can deny it, but if they denied the person the right to develop their property at all, it could be considered.
We're not talking
I
about
understand that, so you're maybe saying that they're asking for too much, and
Yes,
they're saying, and so those are the things that you would address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you kindly for waiting, if you kindly raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name and your address.
Virginia Lammers, South Jamesport, New York. I just celebrated 20 years on Green Street in South Jamesport at the end of August. I've seen a lot of change, and I think what's happened down there is, the expression, give an inch, take a mile. There are 6 terminuses at the end of South Jamesport that the town owns. There's Green Street, there's Willow Street, I have to go down, let me see, there's Point Street, there's South Jamesport Avenue, and on the east side, the town owns Miamog Point. Then we have Center Street, and the last one is West/Washington. And the town owns the right-of-way to the beach on all of those. But over the years, there's been, as Mr. Barnes has been saying, little by little, because of give an inch, take a mile, some of the homeowners think they own the property in front of their places, which is public access to the beach. You can walk along as long as you're below the mean high tide.
We actually defended that case, by the way.
Excuse me?
Dawn and I did that case.
Oh, you did, when you found out when Mr. Paschal wanted the town to give him the end of South Jamesport Avenue. That's when I moved in. I came to that meeting in September. I just was in the house a month.
We were
And he
defending
wanted
the
the
rights
town.
of everybody in that
And then, you know, what he was gonna give the town is the property the town already owned. He was gonna give him the end of Center Street, I think is what it turned out to be, and the town already owned that. But yes, in fact, the Civic had to go back too with you. I think somehow they were involved in getting it. But it's a great concern of mine, because if we had done this right, years ago, Mrs. Luce, that owned the property, wanted to do something with the town and work something out and with the property down there, and that's when the town went wrong.
1940 they've had it.
Excuse me?
They've had that land
Yes,
since
and she
1940.
wanted to do something, I understand, at one
She
point with
did,
the town.
And then the children wound up with it, and now the daughter
Yeah,
is
that's
going.
it. And I'm sorry that I didn't do a little bit more calling ahead because, to call the supervisor, because it would have been so nice for the town to buy that other side so they could have the whole end of Miamog Point. Because we don't have that much Bay Beach as a town.
I absolutely agree.
We only have the town beach here, and, well, anyway, I'm just kinda concerned because I don't know if this new homeowner realizes that people can walk along there. Some homeowners have come down and told people to get off their beach, and they don't have to, but there's no backup from the police department a lot of times with this, when you call them.
They're not always sure of legality.
Well, that's the
of it.
problem, we have to get this all decided.
And again,
It's-
Well, that's why we wound up in court with the other fellow.
Like somebody told me, I'm a newcomer, I came after
We
World War
wound up
II.
in court, and I
But
don't know how many-
people here, for years, there was never any, they would go where they wanted down there.
and we certainly agree with what you're saying, but this is a zoning board, this is not the town board, and that's where you
Okay,
need to
but-
speak to the supervisor and the town council people and let them make the decision on that. This has nothing to do with us. I understand your
I'm also
problem.
explaining that, if
Again, we
we can come see
understand.
the DEC reports, because I would like you to go down to the Bay Breeze and go into their main, room there and look at the picture that's on the wall of what it used to look down there.
I have that picture.
Because Mother Nature may be coming back someday, and it's gonna come in with the water all the way up into, because there used to be a dock down there was fishing. It came up to where the, Schutz Tavern was, and it came up into the, so the homeowner may wanna know that, because.
Okay,
But I also just am concerned about what's happening with the access to the beach, and
again, that's the
All right,
that's the
that's
I don't
board,
even live
that's
there.
not
But I
us.
just
wish I could
also
be there.
hope you will think about all these things. This has been a very pristine area for a long time down there,
Okay,
okay?
Well,
And
hey.
keep that in mind as you're making a decision.
I really am disappointed that the town never really made an effort to get that land.
Yeah,
But from what I understand, there was some very big numbers, and they weren't in the position at the time. But,
yeah.
you know,
Maybe the homeowner
that's
will
what's up
decide
to the
maybe it's gonna
civics.
be
The
too much
civics
of
have
an
to push
effort.
that to buy those undeveloped lots.
But
to
I
get the
just
board
hope
to
that you
do
will
it.
just,
the what?
I just hope that the surveys have been correctly done too.
Well, we'll
For
find out with the building
both
inspector.
of the- Yes, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
right,
sir.
thank you.
Anyone else to be heard on this matter? Mr. Cuddy. I'm sure you've been furiously writing back there, but go ahead, what do you got?
To a degree. But I do wanna point out to everybody that the client who's buying this property is here. And he's, although much of what's been said certainly is not germane to a variance, he's heard it.
Correct.
And I'm sure he'll act upon it appropriately. He's done nothing to interfere with anybody because he hasn't owned the property. He now is going to own it, and I think he'll take proper steps to assure the concerns that they've voiced are met. But I would point out that as far as the variance goes, I believe we have met the criteria, and I think that's what this is about. And it's about using a lot, and you've pointed it out numerous times tonight, that's appropriate on the basis that it's a single and separate ownership, and it has been for years and years, and that he wants to build on it, and he's entitled to build on it. And I would hope the board therefore would approve the variances, and I don't wanna go on and
Thank you.
have a point-by-point conference.
Anyone else to be heard on
Here
this
all
matter?
night.
All right, let's hear a motion, we're gonna move this to the 27th of September.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. Barnes,
Aye.
Mrs. Worthington,
Aye.
Mr. Whitmire,
I vote aye.
I vote aye too, so see you folks, I'm sure, on the 27th. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and your comments.
Oh,